My name is Marco Santiago. I'm 31 years old. And before everything changed, I believed I was building the future. I was the lead propulsion engineer at SpaceX. Yes, that's SpaceX. I lived and breathed rocket science, fire, fuel, vacuum equations, the kind of things that make most people's heads spin. I worked at Starbase, Texas, where the sun burned red like Mars itself, and the desert wind howled like countdown echoes. And to me, Elon Musk wasn't just a boss. He was a prophet of progress, a visionary, a man who dared to speak to the stars like they were old friends waiting for us. I admired him. I trusted him. I believed he would change the world. But I didn't just work for him. I worshipped what he stood for: innovation, speed, escape. I didn't go to church. I didn't pray. I used to when I was little, back when my mother in Manila would light candles every Sunday and whisper prayers into the wooden pews. But those days felt like another lifetime. In America, I traded candles for code, scripture for systems, and God for gravity. My wife Isabel, she never stopped praying. Even when I rolled my eyes, even when I dismissed her gentle faith like it was some old superstition, she kept on. She didn't preach. She just prayed, quietly, steadily, every night. And I didn't know it then, but those prayers were the only light still flickering in my life. At SpaceX, I was someone. I spoke at conferences. I got quoted in articles. I wore the black SpaceX jacket like armor, and I said things like, "If we don't leave Earth, we will die with it." I believed we were the saviors of the species, that technology could rewrite destiny, that we were the builders of a better Eden 1 with oxygen tanks and carbon shields. And still, something in me trembled. I didn't want to admit it, but the world felt strange lately, not just in politics or the news, but deep in the bones of the planet. Like time itself was bending, like everything was speeding up. People were restless, desperate, like they were preparing for something or trying to outrun something they couldn't name. I started to feel it at night. I'd lie in bed, staring at the ceiling, hearing Isabel whisper prayers from the other room. And one night, I heard her say it, "Marco, the Lord's return is near. Don't be left behind." Her voice was shaking, not with fear, but with love. I snapped. I told her to stop bringing fear into our home. I told her I was doing something real, something noble. She didn't argue. She just looked at me with eyes full of sadness and said, "Even rockets burn, Marco, but souls live forever." I didn't sleep after that. Her words played in my mind like a warning, and I began to wonder, what if we were wrong? What if this race to Mars wasn't salvation, but distraction? What if our obsession with escape was just a way to avoid judgment? We kept saying we were out to save humanity, but who gave us that mission? What if we were just building towers like Babel, trying to reach heaven without God? I buried that fear under more numbers, more engines, more pride. But the fear didn't die. It waited. It whispered. And then came the morning. One morning, under the harsh white lights of the control room, something felt different. The air was heavy. The world was quiet. Too quiet. I felt something pressed down on my chest, not physically, but spiritually. Like something was watching, waiting. And as we prepared for that launch, for that moment of glory, I had no idea that I was walking straight into the fire. It began like any other launch day, a mix of tension, adrenaline, and quiet rituals. The engineers sipped burnt coffee, screens flickered with data. The countdown loomed like a silent god. We were preparing Starship SNX, the next generation of interplanetary transport, 33 Raptor engines, our crown jewel, our child of fire. I stood at my station, headset crackling, fingers hovering over touchscreens, reading diagnostics in real time. My heart raced not from fear, but from the sheer weight of what we were about to attempt. This was supposed to be history. This was the day we'd show the world we could touch the stars. Ignition in 5, 4. The system voice echoed cold and clean. 3, 2, 1. A deep roar shook the earth. Not a sound, a force. A primal scream from the belly of metal and flame. The rocket surged upward in a column of fire. People around me started cheering. I felt my body shake with pride. Then, everything unraveled. An alert, a flashing red warning. At first, just a flicker. Then alarms. Number spike columns turned crimson. And then, the sound. A bang. Then another louder, like the heavens were cracking open. The screen in front of me glitched, then went blank. For a split second, in silence. And then came the explosion. Not just loud, deafening. It tore through the ground like an earthquake, window shattering, panels flying. A fireball burst from the base of the rocket like a monstrous flower blooming in reverse. Chaos erupted. I screamed for the override, but it was too late. There was no time to run. Something hot and massive struck my side, then my face, then my chest. My body lifted, then slammed into metal. Pain surged through every nerve like electricity. And then, nothing. Just weightlessness, cold, silence. I opened my eyes. But I wasn't seeing the control room anymore. I was above it, looking down. I saw my body, twisted beneath a collapsed steel beam. My SpaceX jacket torn, blood spreading like ink across my shirt. And I thought, that's not me. It can't be. But it was. It was me. I was dead. People were running, shouting my name. Marco, Marco, can you hear us? Someone knelt beside my body. Someone screamed for a medic. I tried to reach out, to answer, but nothing came out. No sound, no breath. I had no weight, no hands. I was floating, disconnected, like a thread had been cut. And then came the fear. Not physical pain, but something deeper. I realized I wasn't going back. This wasn't a dream. This wasn't shock. This was death. And it was real. So terrifyingly real. My mind raced. Isabel, my wife, my love. What would happen to her? Would she know? Would she believe I was gone? My thoughts became prayers. Desperate, wordless, like a child crying in the dark. And then, something shifted. I felt a pull. Not like gravity, but like a current. A presence, gentle, quiet, yet unmistakably powerful. It drew me away from the horror below. Away from the fire and the blood and the broken bones. I wasn't being dragged. I was being carried. And I remember thinking, if this is death, it's not what I expected. There was no tunnel, no pitch black void. Instead, there was light. Not harsh, not blinding, but infinite and warm. I moved through that light. Or it moved through me. I couldn't tell. But the farther I drifted, the less I felt the weight of fear. It was as if someone was lifting sorrow off of me one layer at a time. And then, he appeared. I didn't need anyone to tell me. I knew. I just knew. It was him. Jesus. Not the way I'd seen in paintings. Not the weak, fragile version in stained glass windows. No. This was a presence so radiant, so holy, that even the light around him seemed to bow in reverence. He didn't speak at first. He just looked at me, and in that gaze, I felt everything. Every secret I'd buried, every sin I'd justified, every tear Isabel had cried for me. I felt known, completely, and yet not condemned. I tried to speak, but my voice broke. Lord, where am I? Am I really dead? And then, he smiled, a smile that undid every knot in my soul. Yes, Marco, your earthly life has ended, but this is not the end. It is only the beginning. And before you take your next step, there are things you must see. His voice wasn't thunder. It wasn't force. It was peace, like water on parched earth. It filled me. It calmed the tremble in my spirit. And though I didn't understand what was happening, I felt safe. I felt held. And then, the light began to shift again. Not fade, just change. Like a veil being drawn back. Like heaven itself was preparing to reveal something I wasn't ready for, something I'd never even imagined. What he showed me next would change everything. I stood in a realm unlike anything I had ever known. There were no walls, no sky, no ground, and yet I wasn't falling. I wasn't floating. I was simply there, held, suspended in what felt like the very breath of God. Light shimmered everywhere, not harsh, not artificial, but alive. Like it had thoughts, like it knew me. Colors I'd never seen before moved in waves across the horizon of eternity. And in that sacred stillness, my heart began to ache. Not from fear, but from something deeper, something older. Like I had finally returned to a place I didn't remember missing, but somehow always longed for. Then I saw him again, Jesus. He didn't walk. He simply was. Like his presence filled the space before his body arrived. He came closer, and the light around him shifted like it had a will of its own, bending in adoration. I tried to fall to my knees, but I had no weight, only surrender. My soul trembled. I couldn't look directly at his face, not because it was frightening, but because it was overwhelming. It wasn't just bright, it was beauty, poured into human form. His eyes held galaxies, but also grief, like he had seen everything, every pain, every war, every child abandoned, every prayer whispered into the dark. and he still chose love. I couldn't speak. My chest felt like it was cracking open, not from pain, but from the sheer holiness of that moment. And then he reached for me. Marco, my son, you are safe. You are seen. You are mine. The moment he touched me, it was like fire and water collided inside my spirit. Every regret, every shameful thing I had ever done, every mocking word I said to Isabel, every time I idolized Elon technology science, my own ego, it all rose to the surface and then dissolved, not ignored, not excused, but healed. There was no condemnation in his gaze, only truth and mercy woven together like the perfect thread. Tears, though I didn't have a body, began to pour from me, from somewhere deep. A cry I didn't even know I was carrying, a sob not just of sorrow, but of coming home. I choked out the only words I could form. Lord, why me? I wasn't faithful. I mocked you. I didn't deserve this. He didn't flinch. He didn't correct me. He just pulled me closer. And when he spoke again, the sound echoed through every part of my being. You didn't earn this, Marco. You were loved into it. I pursued you, even when you ran, even when you raised your fists and crowned other kings. My love didn't wait for your permission. It broke through your pride. It reached through fire to find you. My hands covered my face if I still had hands, and I wept. Not from guilt anymore, but from the weight of being chosen, forgiven, held, all the things the world told me I had to earn. Here, I was simply given because he said so. Then, his expression changed. The peace was still there, but beneath it, a gravity, a burden he was about to share. He stepped to my side and gestured out toward the horizon, and the light around us began to ripple, like a curtain being pulled back. There are things you must see, Marco. Truths buried beneath progress, shadows cloaked in brilliance. You thought you were building the future, but what if the foundation is poison? You loved knowledge, but knowledge without wisdom becomes pride, and pride invites deception. The space around us trembled, light bending into something else, a vision forming at the edge of eternity. I didn't know it yet, but I was about to see what very few have seen. Not just heaven, not just judgment, but the subtle deadly danger hiding beneath humanity's obsession with control, with technology, with becoming gods. And still, even in that moment of awe and fear, I felt his hand never leave mine. That more than anything was what gave me courage. Not the beauty of heaven, not the wonders to come, but the simple, unstoppable truth that this Jesus wasn't just real. He was love, and he had come for me. The light around us began to shift, subtle at first, like morning fog rolling across glass, but then it thickened, darkened, until the brilliance of heaven gave way to something else entirely. A new place was forming, not earth, not quite hell, but something in between. A place built by hands, yet tainted by spirits. I felt a sudden pressure in my chest, not fear, but warning. Jesus stood beside me unshaken. His presence was still peace, but his expression had changed. The warmth was still there, but behind it, I sensed the weight, like he was about to show me something that broke his heart. Marco, I am about to show you what many will not believe, but you must see it, because you were part of it, because you still carry influence and a voice. The space twisted and then resolved into a vision so familiar it made my stomach turn. I was looking into the mind of Elon Musk, not the version the world sees, not the billionaire in a sleek black suit giving TED Talks and commanding attention. No, this Elon was alone, hunched over a massive desk cluttered with devices, maps, prototypes. His eyes were tired, dark circles carved under them. His hands trembled slightly as he tapped commands into a console. He looked human, brilliant, yes, driven absolutely, but also tormented, haunted, and I saw why. Swirling around him were shadows, not solid, not monstrous, but present. Wisps of darkness like black smoke, silent, whispering. I couldn't hear their words, not at first, but I saw their effect. Elon flinched, his jaw clenched, his posture tensed. He was listening, without knowing he was listening. Then the whispers became clearer. They spoke in seductive tones, weaving lies into genius. I heard them say, "You were born to save them. You are the evolution. Rewrite the order. Transcend death. Become more than man." And I felt my skin crawl, because I had heard those very ideas echoed in boardrooms, in forums, in launch briefings. ideas about human enhancement, mind-machine merging, life without God. We thought we were just dreaming big, but now I saw those dreams were planted. I turned to Jesus, my heart pounding. Lord, does he know? Does Elon know he's being influenced? He looked at me, eyes full of grief. No, Marco. He believes he is saving the world. He believes he is doing good. But pride is a doorway, and the whispers entered through that door. They feed on his wounds, his fears, his hunger to outlive death. Then I saw it. A new room. Darker, rich, silent. Around a long table sat figures I recognized not from personal meetings, but from screens, magazines, global headlines, tech moguls, bankers, politicians. But some of them, it sounds as weren't human. Their bodies were convincing, but their eyes were ancient, cold, hollow, black. In walked Elon. They greeted him not like a leader, but like a tool, a vessel. One said, the awakening is spreading faster than we thought. We must accelerate. Another, not even trying to sound human, whispered, Mars must be secured before the harvest. The word harvest sent a chill through me. I turned stunned. Lord, what are they talking about? And his voice, though soft, shook the very air. They speak of my judgment, Marco, of the end foretold. They seek to escape what no man can run from. They believe Mars will be their fortress, their throne beyond my reach. The vision widened. I saw a blueprint of the Martian colony, domes of glass, towers of tech, Neuralink at the center. But not as a tool for healing, as a system of control, total control. Thoughts tracked, emotions suppressed, spiritual hunger silenced. And then I understood. They weren't building a sanctuary. They were building a godless Eden, a counterfeit kingdom, one where man rules without God. My knees weakened, my voice shook. But Lord, I helped build this. I worked on these engines. I believed in this mission. And that is why I brought you here, so you could see. Not every vision of the future is holy. Not every ambition is innocent. You were deceived, as many are still deceived. But now, you will carry truth. The scene faded, but the weight did not. I had seen behind the curtain. I had seen what Elon could not or would not see. He was not evil, but he was being used. And the covenant of shadows, as Jesus called them, they were not interested in salvation, only survival. Without repentance, power. Without love, I looked at Jesus. I had no words, only trembling. But he placed his hand on my shoulder, warm, steady, unshakable, and I knew this was only the beginning. The vision shifted again, like reality itself was being folded in half. I braced myself, still trembling from what I had seen in that dark council. But what came next gripped me in a way I can barely describe. I was no longer on Earth. Mars. But not the Mars we knew from rovers and photos. This was the future, and it was terrifying in its perfection. The surface was still red dusty, dry as bone, but rising from the wasteland were towers of glass and steel, massive domes clear as crystal encased entire cities. They shimmered beneath a hazy orange sky like jewels, or like cages. I floated closer. The air outside was death, but inside those domes, life thrived. Or at least, something that looked like life. Skyscrapers pulsed with light. Streets were spotless. Transportation was silent, fast, exact. People moved with efficiency. Everything was clean, polished, artificial. At first glance, it was breathtaking. But the longer I watched, the more my spirit recoiled. Because something was missing. I saw families eating together in silence, eyes hollow. I saw children playing, but there was no laughter, no spontaneity. Just programmed joy. The colors were perfect. The technology was godlike. But the soul was gone. And then I saw it. Neuralink. Not as an idea, not as a prototype, but fully implemented everywhere. A thin glowing strand behind every ear. A subtle flicker in the eye. Real-time data streamed across invisible grids in the air. Every thought, every feeling was monitored, tracked, corrected. And those who deviated, those who questioned, those who still whispered the name of Jesus, they didn't belong. At first, they were called errors, then non-compliance, then they simply disappeared. I saw it with my own eyes. A woman knelt in her room, holding a tattered Bible she had smuggled in. She whispered, "Lord, I still believe." And within seconds, a soft beep echoed in the walls. A red light blinked overhead. Minutes later, she was gone, erased. No one asked where. No one dared. I turned to Jesus horrified. Lord, why how could this happen? And his voice was pain wrapped in holiness. Because they chose safety over surrender, progress over presence, control over communion. This is the salvation they built for themselves, Marco. A salvation without me, a paradise without love, a future without truth. The words pierced me. I watched as people worshiped the system. They bowed to convenience. They surrendered identity for inclusion. Everything was provided: food, shelter, entertainment. But their spirits were starving. And yet, most didn't know they were lost. Because they were always distracted. Screens everywhere, voices in their minds, soft, affirming, synthetic. No one felt alone, but no one was truly known. It was the most elegant form of slavery I had ever seen. And those who still carried the light, those few who dared to remember, they lived in hiding, in the shadows, meeting underground, whispering the name that once echoed in cathedrals and homes, now forbidden: Jesus. My remnant still exists, even here, even now, but they are hunted, silenced, forgotten, because the world has chosen another God, one made of algorithms and ambition. I wept. I fell to my knees, or whatever part of me still resembled knees, and I cried out, I helped build this. I was part of it. I cheered for it. I believed in it. But Jesus didn't pull away. You were blind, Marco, but now you see. And those who see must speak. This is not a vision meant to condemn, but to awaken. You still have breath. You still have purpose. Then he showed me one last thing. A group of children, huddled together. No devices, no implants, just quiet hearts and wide eyes. They were praying, whispering words they barely understood, but somehow felt. Jesus, help us. And the light in that room was unlike anything else I had seen. Not technology, not design, but something holy. A flicker of real life, still fighting, still burning. And I understood. This was the cost. This was the fruit of a world that traded reverence for research and lost the very thing that made us human. Not intelligence, but love. The vision shifted again, like reality itself was being folded in half. I braced myself, still trembling from what I had seen in that dark council. But what came next gripped me in a way I can barely describe. I was no longer on Earth, Mars. But not the Mars we knew from rovers and photos. This was the future, and it was terrifying in its perfection. The surface was still red dusty, dry as bone, but rising from the wasteland were towers of glass and steel. Massive domes clear as crystal encased entire cities. They shimmered beneath a hazy orange sky like jewels, or like cages. I floated closer. The air outside was death, but inside those domes, life thrived. Or at least, something that looked like life. Skyscrapers pulsed with light. Streets were spotless. Transportation was silent, fast, exact. People moved with efficiency. Everything was clean, polished, not artificial. At first glance, it was breathtaking. But the longer I watched, the more my spirit recoiled. Because something was missing. I saw families eating together in silence, eyes hollow. I saw children playing, but there was no laughter, no spontaneity, just programmed joy. The colors were perfect. The technology was godlike, but the soul was gone. And then I saw it, Neuralink. Not as an idea, not as a prototype, but fully implemented everywhere. A thin glowing strand behind every ear, a subtle flicker into the eye. Real-time data streamed across invisible grids in the air. Every thought and every feeling was monitored, tracked, corrected. And those who deviated, those who questioned, those who still whispered the name of Jesus, they didn't belong. At first, they were called errors, then non-compliance, then they simply disappeared. I saw it with my own eyes. A woman knelt in her room, holding a tattered Bible she had smuggled in. She whispered, "Lord, I still believe." And within seconds, a soft beep echoed in the walls. A red light blinked overhead. Minutes later, she was gone, erased. No one asked where, no one dared. I turned to Jesus, horrified. Lord, why how could this happen? And his voice was pain wrapped in holiness. Because they chose safety over surrender, progress over presence, control over communion. This is the salvation they built for themselves, Marco. A salvation without me, a paradise without love, a future without truth. The words pierced me. I watched as people worshiped the system. They bowed to convenience. They surrendered identity for inclusion. Everything was provided: food, shelter, entertainment. But their spirits were starving. And yet, Most didn't know they were lost because they were always distracted. Screens everywhere, voices in their minds soft, affirming synthetic. No one felt alone, but no one was truly known. It was the most elegant form of slavery I had ever seen. And those who still carried the light, those few who dared to remember, they lived in hiding, in the shadows, meeting underground, whispering the name that once echoed in cathedrals and homes, now forbidden, Jesus. My remnant still exists, even here, even now, but they are hunted, silenced, forgotten, because the world has chosen another god, one made of algorithms and ambition. I wept. I fell to my knees, or whatever part of me still resembled knees, and I cried out. I helped build this. I was part of it. I cheered for it. I believed in it. But Jesus didn't pull away. You were blind, Marco, but now you see, and those who see must speak. This is not a vision meant to condemn, but to awaken. You still have breath. You still have purpose. Then he showed me one last thing. A group of children, huddled together, no devices, no implants, just quiet hearts and wide eyes. They were praying, whispering words they barely understood, but somehow felt. Jesus, help us. And the light in that room was unlike anything else I had seen. Not technology, not design, but something holy. A flicker of real life, still fighting, still burning. And I understood. This was the cost. This was the fruit of a world that traded reverence for research and lost the very thing that made us human. Not intelligence, but love. I stood before him, torn, undone, overwhelmed. I had seen too much, and yet I knew it was only a glimpse. My soul was still shaking from what I witnessed. The silence of faithless cities, the sterilized perfection of Mars, the hollow chants of a world that had forgotten God. My voice broke. Lord, what am I supposed to do with all of this? How can I go back to that world and act like nothing happened? I wanted to scream. I wanted to hide. I wanted to stay in that holy presence forever, wrapped in the peace that filled this place like the very air. But Jesus, he was looking at me with a love that was steady and fierce. You don't have to go back, Marco. You may stay here in my rest, in my glory. No more sorrow, no more pain. And just like that, I saw it, behind him, a light unlike any I had seen, not glowing, but alive. It pulsed with color and music and warmth. It wasn't a place. It was home, the kind of home the soul remembers, but the body never knew. I felt every part of me leaning toward it, aching for it. My soul wanted to run into that light and never look back. But then, a face. Isabel, her face, tears on her cheeks, kneeling beside my hospital bed, her hands gripping mine like she was holding back death with her fingers, her mouth moving, whispering my name like a broken prayer. I saw her pacing the hallway. I saw her gripping my wedding ring. I saw her collapsing into the arms of a nurse who said, "I'm sorry." And then I saw my colleagues, still working, still blind, still believing in the dream I had helped build. I saw young people, boys and girls, scrolling endlessly, desperate for something real, but caught in a storm of digital noise. I saw pastors silenced. I saw prophets mocked. I saw churches empty. And I saw millions, billions, walking toward a future without knowing they were leaving God behind. I dropped to my knees. I can't leave them. I can't. I don't care what it costs. I can't leave them like this. Jesus knelt beside me. His hand rested on my shoulder. Then go. Go not with fear, but with fire. Speak not with pride, but with purpose. You will not be alone. I will go with you. My spirit will go before you. And every word you speak in truth will become a seed. Some will mock, some will ignore, but others will awaken. I sobbed, but this time it wasn't despair. It was resolve. The kind that doesn't come from strength, but from surrender. I looked up into his eyes. Will I be believed? He didn't promise. He didn't guarantee applause or acceptance. You were not called to be popular. You were called to be faithful. And with that, the light around me began to dim. The glory faded. The warmth remained, but the sound of earth, the beeping of monitors, the panic of nurses began to rise like a tide. It was happening. I was going back. One last time I looked at him. Lord, thank you. And he smiled. This is not the end, Marco. This is only the beginning. Then everything collapsed into blackness. Not darkness, just absence. Until pain, sound, machines, voices, a woman screaming my name. Marco, oh my God. Marco, you're back. You're back.
It was Isabel.
I opened my eyes. Barely. The light burned. My chest ached. My lips cracked. But I was alive. After 23 minutes of no pulse, I was breathing. Doctors called it a miracle. I called it mercy. In the days that followed, I told Isabel everything. The visions, the voice, the warning, and she didn't laugh. She didn't doubt. She just cried and said I knew. I felt it. I prayed for this. You were never alone. I resigned from SpaceX, quietly, respectfully, but permanently. I walked away from the dream I had built to follow the truth that had saved me. And now, I speak wherever I can, however I can, not to make a name for myself, but to warn,
To awaken.
to remind the world. Salvation is not on Mars. Hope is not in Elon. Freedom is not in machines. Only Jesus saves, and I am living proof that even in the shadow of rockets and brilliance and fame, grace still breaks through. This story isn't just about Marco, it's about us. A generation chasing progress, but forgetting presence. A world building towers to the stars, while our hearts drift farther from heaven. In a time when men are being worshipped and machines are being trusted more than God, this testimony is a wake-up call. Salvation won't come from Mars. It won't come from Neuralink. It won't come from Elon. It only comes from Jesus. If this story stirred something in you, don't ignore it. Leave a comment below, just type Jesus is Lord if you still believe He's the only way. Share this video with someone who needs to remember that truth. And subscribe to Pinoy Faith Stories for more testimonies that expose darkness and shine the light of Christ. The time is short. Stay awake, stay ready, stay with Jesus.